saw that coming? No, I didn't. I really didn't. But once it happened, it certainly made a whole lot of sense with Wisconsin disposing of Michigan in easy fashion at Camp Randall, 35-14, and it wasn't anywhere close to 35-14. We got Tyler Hunt on the line from Bucky's Fifth Quarter, the SB Nation platform for Wisconsin athletics. Tyler, how are you doing today?
I am feeling great. Obviously, like you said, a huge win last Saturday. I thought the Badgers would win. I didn't think they'd win it, in that blowout fashion, because like you said, it wasn't even as close as the score showed at the end. But obviously it's huge for Wisconsin. That was one on the schedule that you had to get, because you've still got some tough games coming up. So, but overall, you're 3-0 and you've won pretty handily so far. So there's not really much to complain about.
Yeah, so you took on a team that is supposed to be more talented, but you faced that at Wisconsin in regards to being more talented than maybe 8 teams on the schedule. Then you face 4 that typically are just as good, or based on the recruiting rankings, supposed to be better. But this is not something that we haven't seen before, that the sum of the parts better than what the recruiting rankings say on the other side. And it seems to be that Michigan typically made in the model of the Jim Harbaugh way would be just as physical and have been in the past, but they're trying to switch things up and become more of a finesse team and really don't know what they are right now. But Wisconsin football identity, there is no question about it. What they do well, they know who they are, they know what they're bringing to the table, and they're not to be denied in regards to effort and execution.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right. People can knock the cloud of dust, run the ball type football, but it's the way Wisconsin's been for since Barry Alvarez took the program back over as head coach, and it's been passed along. Obviously, there were a couple years where they even looked to switch. Obviously, Gary Anderson was more of a spread type guy in the brief time that he was here, and it didn't. They had some good years, but it didn't work out as well. And I think Michigan's kind of going through that same growing pain of changing that. And obviously it's a tough transition. So I think we were happy to get Michigan early in the season. As they adjust to that, I think they'll be a better team down the road. But for right now, it's been a good stretch for Wisconsin, and just keep running the ball behind the tackles. It seems to work. So.
Yeah, and it's not going to work this well each and every week, especially against the tough teams, but certainly to perform like that on the big stage against Michigan, what was supposed to be the first real test of this season, certainly, and to perform like that. And again, 35-14 does not do the effort justice, because it was a complete annihilation. Was there anything that stood out in particular? And it's hard to pick anything out, because the defense was so dominant. The running game, when Jack Cohn had to go to the air, he was extremely efficient. The receivers were making the plays on a 13 for 16 passing day. Does anything, though, in particular stand out as, wow, we might be even better than I thought because of blank?
I think, we may be even better than we thought because of Jack Cohn. Obviously, 13 for 16 he was incredibly efficient, but even more so than just throwing the football, he looked in complete command of the offense. No moment looked too big for him, which is something you want to see. And again, so far through three games, he's taken care of the football. And that was a big problem for Alex Hornibrook in his past, and Jack a little bit last year. But so far, he's looked incredibly confident. Michigan blue chip players all over the field on the defense, and he stood back there and threw the ball. And I think he brings some real confidence to this team. I think nobody would say it in the program, but last year I think there was just some lapse in the overall QB confidence. And Jack has taken that leadership role on and really done a great job of it. I think one thing that really stood out to me was that 25 or so yard scramble to put them up 28-0, where Cohn kind of dove and laid his body on the line to get that score. I think it just shows the leadership that Jack's got, and that he's willing to do anything for his teammates. And obviously Wisconsin's always run the ball well, and quarterback play has kind of been their Achilles heel. So if you've got a guy like that who doesn't have to do that much, he just has to make plays, take care of the football, and have command of the huddle and the offense, it's huge, because they're going to run the ball well. They're going to normally play good defense. Obviously, that was a little bit of an issue last year, but overall, they've kind of come back to that. So if you have good quarterback play, efficient quarterback play like we had, I think the sky is really the limit for this football team.
I certainly thought it was going to be a close game, and the first two drives of the game gave me indication of why I thought it was going to be a close game. I didn't expect Wisconsin to run it down Michigan's throat to the ability that they did on the first drive, but I expected Wisconsin to obviously lean on the ground game with Jonathan Taylor, maybe not run for 203 and 359 total, but maybe a buck 25, a buck 40 from Taylor, and they run for a buck 80, something like that. But Michigan, after Wisconsin scored on the first drive on a long drive, as they typically do, Ronnie Bell, boom, 68 yards, Michigan's down the field. And I'm thinking, okay, this is playing out the way I'm thinking, is that Wisconsin's going to churn out yardage and score. Michigan's going to, they don't have a ground game. They're depleted at running back. Plus, Wisconsin's difficult to run on. But those elite athletes are going to get in space, and that's how they're going to make their yardage and points. But they fumble 2 plays later, and Wisconsin just rolled from there. So what's really surprising and impressive from the Wisconsin side is not that you held Michigan to 40 yards on 19 carries. Again, they were depleted up front. They do have what is supposed to be a really good offensive line, but depleted at running back. But to hold a passing team with their weapons, and I know Donovan Peoples-Jones wasn't a factor in this game, wasn't around, but to hold a quarterback, and I know Shea Patterson is getting all sorts of criticism, but he is a good quarterback with a lot of talent. 14 for 32 out of Shea Patterson in this game. To hold an offense in this day and age to under 50% completion percentage is pretty outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, it was a full effort from all 11 guys. I think they got immense pressure from the defensive line. Obviously, we talked about last week Bryson Williams, the nose tackle, being out, and a true freshman in Keanu Benton stepping into that role in his first real test. And his play didn't show up on the stat sheets too much, but you saw him really jamming that middle up, and that allowed the linebackers to get pressure in the passing game. And that allowed, when the linebackers are getting pressure, that means there's quicker throws, and it allowed the cornerbacks and the safeties to make plays. So I was impressed with the whole unit on the defensive side of the ball. Like you said, Shea Patterson has gotten some criticism for his game, but I still expect him to be a good quarterback, and I thought he was a good quarterback coming into this game. So it's interesting to see. I think it gives a lot of credit to the Wisconsin defense, but it also shows Michigan's struggles. But overall, you have to be happy with where this defense is at, especially, at this time last year, Wisconsin was talking about an upset loss from BYU. So this is a completely different unit and team than they've had, one calendar year later almost.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Badgers, courtesy Tyler Hunt. You can join him on Bucky's Fifth Quarter on SB Nation, breaking down Wisconsin football and athletics overall. And now we turn the page to Northwestern coming to Camp Randall. The Wildcats have been a thorn in Bucky Badger's side for quite some time, not necessarily winning the games, but it's always a struggle against Northwestern. They won the Big Ten West last year. This program fascinates me because they don't get the athletes, but they just compete their rear ends off and typically get the job done from being tough, technically sound, a lot of the things that we see out of Wisconsin, but not quite over time to that level. But certainly were last year in winning a bowl game and, again, getting to the Big Ten championship game. But right now, having their struggles offensively as well, losing to Michigan State last week, 31-10, and talk about acclaimed quarterbacks. Hunter Johnson certainly is in that category as a former 5-star, but having his bumps and bruises, both physically and mentally out there, not having the type of elite athletes on the perimeter that he was used to practicing with at Clemson. And Northwestern just really struggling offensively, and it appears as though Wisconsin's ready-made to win this one big as well.
You would hope so. Obviously, I know people have talked about a possible letdown spot, but I don't see that with this team. Last year was I think a really big punch in the mouth where they can't just show up and go out there and hope to win. They've got to really be focused. So I think that part of it, and also like you said, they've been a thorn in Wisconsin's side. They beat them last year, and it was really an awful game from the Badgers' standpoint last year. It was sloppy. Jonathan Taylor put the ball on the ground twice, and that was Jack Cohn's first career start. So things really snowballed last year against Northwestern. And like you said, they're a sound team. They do a lot that Wisconsin does, where they do more with less. They're really well coached. Obviously, Pat Fitzgerald. So it's not a spot where Wisconsin can let any momentum off the gas pedal that way. I think it helps that it's, again, at home. Anytime the Badgers travel to Evanston is nightmare fuel. We never play well there, especially 11 a.m. You're just kind of getting off the bus a little sleepy. So I think the Badgers are going to come in and be focused in this one, and you have to be against a team like that because they're disciplined, and eventually that they're going to get their offense going. So.
Yeah, it's a really scrappy defense, really good defense. Patty Fisher comes to mind as well. They've got an experienced linebacking core. The defensive end, Graziani, is a really good player for them as well. But, man, they can only hold up for the offense so much, and they have really struggled on that side of the ball. They only had 7 points against Stanford, and again against Michigan State. They needed a short field to put the one touchdown on the board in that game. Yeah, I see last year's game. I'm trying to remember if I watched this one. Yeah, 31-17 Northwestern at home against Wisconsin. The previous year at Wisconsin was a 33-24 Badgers decision. I do remember that game as well. Of course, Wisconsin marching on to the Big Ten championship game that year. But the Wildcats, if anything, I would be surprised if they laid down. They're going to come in and fight. They're limited offensively, so the scoreboard may not display it because it may get out of hand. But Northwestern's going to fight you, and they will give it their best shot, and certainly block and tackle to the best of their ability in this one.
Yeah, I expect them to obviously, give a good fight. It's Northwestern. It's not some team that, they were in the Big Ten title game last year. So it's not a team that is too far off of it. Obviously, people have said that was kind of a fluke, but they're a well-coached team. And so I don't think it is. I think the Badgers really need to come in focused. And then you also have to look at, like the guys they've got on defense, they've got some quality players. And also Jonathan Taylor has kind of struggled against Northwestern. He's only been held under 100 yards 5 times in his career, and 2 of those were against Northwestern. So you can see that whatever Pat Fitzgerald is doing on that defensive side of the ball, he's been one of the few guys that's been able to contain JT in those spots. So it'll be interesting to see if Wisconsin keeps out and keeps that domination going running the football. But it's certainly a monkey on JT's back that he's going to want to try and get off. Because, like I said, last year he had 2 fumbles and probably his worst career game against Northwestern. So it'll be interesting to see from that aspect too.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down all the big Week 5 matchups, including Northwestern's trip to Camp Randall to take on the Badgers. Of course, Wisconsin coming off the huge win against Michigan. You can get my weekly college football predictions at the link below next to Voice of College Football Community. Also, a lot of exclusive content. If you're not into predictions, a lot of exclusive content there as well to help us build the channel. And you can join us in a number of ways as well. We've got an Amazon link down in the description section below where you can do your Amazon shopping. With Christmas coming up, just grab the link right there. It's the same shopping experience, but you help us build the channel. So big picture for the Badgers, Tyler. Kent State, okay. Then it's Michigan State, Illinois, Ohio State, Iowa. It gets deep into Big Ten Western Division play, and then the difficult crossover against Michigan State and against the Buckeyes. Big picture, Cohn's obviously a huge key in all of this. If there's going to be a game that's going to rest on his shoulders, or maybe 90 seconds on the clock, down 4, got to go 65 yards, that type of deal. But besides him, what would you point to? You got to be pleased with every unit on the field based on the performance through 3 games. It's just been off the charts. But if there's anything that you're thinking, okay, this could be a concern. They've played well to date, but I want to see them against great competition. And we thought that was against Michigan. But down the road, what's going to be the key to the season in terms of it really being a special 2019?
Sure. Obviously in the short term for this week, I think there's the concern in the secondary. Reggie Pearson and Eric Burrell are going to be without, their services in the first half because they both were ejected for targeting last week in the second half. So Northwestern hasn't thrown the ball well, but they haven't taken a lot of deep shots yet. I was talking to a colleague of mine at SB Nation about Northwestern earlier, and he talked about if there was a time where the Wildcats were going to take some shots downfield, this has kind of got to be the time with some new faces in the secondary. Long term, I think one position that hasn't been talked about a lot with Wisconsin that normally has been pretty solid is the tight end position. They're a little thin at that position overall. Jake Ferguson is obviously a really good pass catcher. but he hasn't been, involved in the offense too much. Maybe that's because Jack Cohn has some bigger targets and some quality receivers, and they don't need to rely on the tight end as much. But as you go through, obviously you touched on a grueling Big Ten season. That position will be important. And, as that season goes on and they start to, opposing defense start to figure out Jonathan Taylor as best they can, I think a safety valve at the tight end position will be something that the Badgers could certainly work on and develop. And, if they keep rolling that way and can add a quality tight end performance, it's only going to help this team as they look to get back to Indianapolis.
All right, Wisconsin, Northwestern. If any matchup reeks Big Ten Western Division rivalries, the last two champions going at it in Madison, and the Badgers, of course, a big favorite. I looked at the line at 24, but that's not surprising considering the performance not just last week, but the last 3 weeks. And of course, Northwestern struggling to regain its 2018 form. Tyler Hunt, please join him, the rest of the staff there at SB Nation's Bucky's Fifth Quarter, to track Wisconsin as they try to get themselves back to Indianapolis in a Big Ten championship game. Tyler, we appreciate you stopping down, breaking down the game for us.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks for having me. Have a good one.